Dear participants, welcome to the CCI APAC Marcom webinar organized by CCI India, Japan, and Singapore. Before we start the webinar, we have some rules to be followed for the participants. Please mute your audio and webcam throughout the course of the presentations and panel discussion. Please mention any questions in the chat box along with your name and company after the panel discussion is over. Address your questions only to the organizers. Dear participants, in order to start the webinar, I would like to welcome Ms. Payal S. Kanwar, Director General of CCI India, to open the session. Payal, can we welcome you on floor?
Hi, everyone. I hope you can see me. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's the afternoon for all the countries participating. I hope that you're well and safe during this exceptional time. I'd like to start by welcoming you all to this webinar being organized today jointly by the French speakers in India, Singapore, and Japan. A lot of coordination has gone into organizing this across time zones, and I'm happy to see that today we have more than 100 participants. I can see that 80 have already joined, and I think we will have more coming in as we move along. So thank you to the entire organization team for working on putting this together over the past few weeks. This first ever APAC webinar will address crisis communications, and I'm very excited because we have a highly distinguished panel that my colleague will introduce to you in a few moments. As we know, the COVID-19 outbreak has created a lot of disruption worldwide, impacting our daily lives, jobs, and economies. With social media being the primary medium for information consumption, clear end-to-end crisis communication has become key for dealing with this pandemic. I wanted to say a few words about the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The Chamber is a 40-year-old organization with 5 offices in India, and we represent a network of close to 700 member companies. Today, IFCCI is recognized as one of the most active bilateral chambers of commerce in India. Just a few words about the situation here. We have been in a nationwide lockdown since the 25th of March, and this is to come to an end on the 3rd of May. However, we expect some new guidelines to be released over the weekend by the government. During this lockdown period, our team has been working from home since the past 5 weeks, and it's been quite busy for us so far. We've launched several initiatives, which include about 18 webinars. We have conducted 2 COVID-19 surveys. We've also been helping our member companies with dealing with a lot of advocacy issues, local government, local and central government. And we are also publishing a CSR report on all the good work that's being done during this time by our member companies. So thank you very much again, and back to Rishika to bring on the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Payal. I would now like to welcome Ms. Mari Ozaki from CCI Japan to make an introduction. Mari, can we please welcome you on floor?
Yes. Hello, everybody. So I cannot activate my camera. Is that correct? So, well, hello, everybody. So my name is Mari Ozaki, in charge of events at the French Chamber of Commerce in Tokyo. So our main objective nowadays is to provide the most useful information to our members in order to help them in this difficult situation. I'm therefore very thankful to the French Chamber in India to have initiated this very interesting webinar. I think it's a wonderful occasion to join forces and share point of views among different countries. And thank you very much to the incredible speakers who took some time in their very busy agenda. Yes. So can everybody hear me? So I leave the floor now to Lydia Fulton, Head of Business Club at the French Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. Thank you very much.
Bonjour, thank you very much, Mari. I don't know if you can see me, actually, because I can't neither activate my camera. My name is Lydia Fulton. turn on. Okay, here I am, sorry. So my name is Lydia Fulton. I'm the head of the business club at the French Chamber of Commerce in Singapore, in charge of the events, committee meetings, and communication. It is a great pleasure to have such a panel today around this topic on crisis communication. Thank you for joining Florian, Marie, and Kanchan today. I'm also very happy to this webinar on borders with my colleagues in India and Japan. Certainly one of the positive effects of the pandemic being agile and innovative. Just to give you a bit of background in Singapore and how as a French in Singapore we are communicating towards our member since the beginning of the crisis. So by end of March, we have contacted all our members individually by phone, meaning more than 700 company members, to measure how we could help and support them in order to implement and activate solutions. Through those calls, we could gather a lot of insights, but we realized that being united was the answer. So we decided to create our COVID-19 collaborative platform, which is open to all members and non-members to share and offer solutions to the ones in need. We have today more than 80 solutions on the platform, and we have helped to make more than 20 connections so far. I invite you, by the way, to check our website for more information. I know as well that the French Chamber in Japan has duplicated that same platform locally, and then more chambers in the region are following the same path. This platform is one of the examples on how we engage the business community here. We did quite a lot more, being stronger together during this critical situation. I'm pleased now to give the mic to Yang Li, partner, and Anthony Pin, director from PwC Singapore, who will give us a macro view on the current challenges in communication and the immigration situation in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. As mentioned, my name is Yang, and I lead our global mobility practice and immigration practice for Asia, based in Singapore, and joined today by Anthony Pang, who is one of our directors in our global mobility services, looking after Singapore and also the wider region. So, as the previous discussion had mentioned, the situation with COVID is quite a significant impact across the world. If I could sort of share, and I don't know if anyone can sort of help me move this page, but globally there are now over 170 countries and territories which have been somehow somewhat affected and implemented COVID-19 travel restrictions, be that entry bans, visa cancellations, country or city lockdowns. And this is together with very tough quarantine measures across the globe. Now, amongst this, and this is something that we often speak with our about, is most of these measures may seem very draconian, and individuals may feel personally sort of impacted, and there's a lot of emotions at play. But it's important to remember that when it comes to this pandemic, every government around the world has reshifted all of their focus to the main priority, which is to contain and reduce the spread of the infection and keep the citizens safe. So it's putting in context of the overall situation and understanding where the government's focus is actually on at the moment. Now, most of these measures are implemented on an individual country perspective. So what that often means for individuals as well as multinational organizations is having to link up different sources of information and interpret it in a way that makes sense for their population and for themselves. And it's important to note that these are the measures that are implemented very, very quickly. We actually have a global team in place to make sure we have around-the-clock updates to implement and ensure that our clients are updated on a real life basis. And it takes a lot of man hours and a lot of manpower to keep this going. So I can imagine for a lot of organizations and a lot of individuals out there impacted by this, it is a very challenging time to keep up with the relevant information and to keep up with the accurate information. And certainly for us, PwC, we do have a sort of a dedicated task force assigned to this to manage both internal communication with our staff as well as communication with our clients. As a indication of what we've seen so far, in particular for Singapore, there have been numerous measures the multi-ministry task force have been implementing from late January to end of March. So in the span of more or less 6 weeks or so, it actually reduced quite significant. So the measures are implemented very, very quick. And we know of situations where both individuals and also companies have been caught in the various updates, whether their sort of staff have been sort of still overseas and looking to come back to Singapore, or whether they are impacted as a business and having sort of certain measures imposed on them for not adhering to the stringent measurements. And these are the challenges that we've been seeing, and the clients have been sort of coming to us to ask about what is the most effective communication to do in the current situation. I'm glad that, you know, the Chamber of Commerce have put this together, because I think it's absolutely vital to make sure that both company and also organization and individuals are aware of the circumstances and know how to communicate with their staff to make sure that the risks are managed in a way that's empathetic and also appealed to on an individual basis. So I'm very keen to hear what the panel has in line for us. And in relation to the sort of the session, we do have upcoming webinar with the French Chamber of Commerce on Monday to specifically talk about the immigration implications for both France and Singapore. And we also are lining up a PwC webinar for Japanese clients to come and join us to talk about the sort of the Japan and Singapore aspects. So wanted to sort of pass the floor to Anthony to just comment a little bit about what he's also seen in this space, and if we can move on to the next slide as well.
Thanks, Yang. Hope you can hear me. So as mentioned by Yang, this crisis is absolutely unique in the sense that we have more than 170 countries with border restrictions. Initially, it was just, if you can say so, a health challenge, and rapidly it has become a pandemic and an economic crisis. But the difference, if we compare that to 2008, the last crisis we had, it was a financial crisis initially that became an economic crisis. Today, what is very specific is that the economy is impacted because we have decided, we have chosen life against economy. So we have taken measures to protect the life of the people, and by doing that, we, and I mean we, the different governments, the authorities, have created an economic crisis by refraining people from traveling, from moving, which has created a massive challenges. And the key thing is that the COVID has a personal and very emotional impact on every one of us. In addition, the rules are changing all the time, as mentioned by Yang. We have created a special task force just to be able to follow that. We have questions all around the world. Yang is leading our immigration. I'm part of the tax part, and we have questions all the time around all this. But the key point, we have rediscovered words that we believe belong to the past, like quarantine. Quarantine looks like something coming directly from the Middle Age, and now it has become a common reality for all of us. So it is very unique crisis that is based basically because of the health and because decision of government to restrict people from moving, from working, from managing their business. We are switching slowly to a different world and an economic crisis. And in this time, this unprecedented time where everything is moving, changing, communication is going to be absolutely key in the future. That's why I believe that this webinar is really important and interesting. I'm looking forward to hear from the participants and their sharing experience on the communication, how to communicate during crisis moments. Up to you.
Thanks, Anthony. And if anyone like to join the next session hosted by French Chamber of Commerce, please reach out to the chamber. And also, if you'd like to get access to PwC's COVID restriction dashboard, please feel free to contact myself and Anthony, which our contact details are on the next slide. Thank you very much, and we'll hand over back to the Chamber of Commerce to introduce our panelists.
Well, thank you, Yang and Anthony, for that insightful presentation. I'm very pleased and honored to welcome our moderator for the session, Ms. Konsunta, who's the Vice President, Public Affairs, Communication and CSR at Total Oil India. Kanchan has a diverse experience in sales and marketing, human resource and communication. She owes to a military background, due to which she is widely traveled within India and internationally. For over 6 years, Kanchan looked after the operations in the Middle East and has handled 21 nationalities. She's managed a key HR project, the Young Graduate Program for Africa, based in Paris, which was launched in 37 African countries to 500 young graduates within 2 years. Kanchan, I'm very pleased to welcome you on floor, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ishita. And I think before we commence with what we've for our viewers this afternoon, I think all of the panelists and myself would like to applaud the IFCCI for such an innovative webinar. But then again, that is just testimonial to the fact that a global crisis such as COVID-19 calls for communities across geographies to come together. And that's exactly what we are doing today. We're going to share experiences from across geographies as to how we are going to tackle the communication aspect of this pandemic. Without further ado, let me introduce our panelists. So I start with Anjali Patil. Anjali is the head of brand and communications for Southeast Asia at BNP Paribas, based out of Singapore. Responsibilities include managing external and internal communications, branding and events, and corporate social responsibility activities in the Southeast Asia region. Prior to this, Anjali spent 9 years as head of brand and communications for BNP Paribas in India, in Mumbai. Additionally, as the India CSR coordinator, she was instrumental in setting up the BNP Paribas India Foundation. Anjali has over 25 years of work experience and is the member of an accredited practitioner of the Chartered Institute of Public Relations in London. She also serves as a member of the advisory board of the Charitable Trust. So welcome, Anjali. We are happy to have you here with us this afternoon. Let's move on to Mary Konsunta. Mary is French-born with a pinch of Chinese origin. Mary leads international leadership. She carries 13 years of experience, mainly in digital marketing and sales. She started her career in the hospitality industry and then decided to move to the B2B distribution sector. In 2018, Mary joined Lireco, the office supplies distribution specialist, where she is currently regional head of digital marketing for Asia. Mary has held various positions during her career in trade marketing, global account management, and digital marketing. Her international journey brought her from France to Dubai and now to Singapore. In addition to her digital marketing hat for Asia, Mary also drives the CSR activities for Asia. Welcome to you, Mary. Happy to have you on board as well. And now our third panelist is Florian Tripolino. She's born in France, raised in an Italian family, married to a German, and having lived and worked in France, Germany, Russia, and Singapore, Florian truly is international. And she's worked in different agency networks, including YNR, JWT, and Publicis. She is particularly experienced in partnering with her clients, getting familiar with their business in order to come up with innovative end-to-end solutions. leveraging new agency capabilities that have measurable impact in our client's business. Florian has worked with many FMCG like Pepsi, Master Foods, Danone, Kraft, Johnson & Johnson, and Procter & Gamble, to name a few. Since January 2019, Florian is the CEO of Publicis Group in Japan. So as you can see, we have a very distinguished panel with us this afternoon, and it will be very interesting to have their views on communication tactics in these difficult times. Well, we all know that, the COVID-19 speed and scale has bred uncertainty and complete emotional disruption. Hence, it's extremely critical how organizations communicate about it, because that can create clarity, build resilience, and catalyze positive change. So let's start with our first question that I think what we're going to try and do in this session is going to look at communication at the onset of the COVID, communication tactics at the time of the COVID, and I mean, that's now, and what's going to happen with the crisis. So I think that's going to give our viewers a complete idea of the entire communication cycle through this crisis. Let's start with you, Anjali. How were you communicating with your clients before and at the onset of the COVID-19 crisis?
First of all, thank you, Konsunta, for the kind introduction, and very happy to be here on this webinar. I think in Singapore and most of Asia, we've been at this now for I think close to 3 months. When Wuhan was closed around the end of January, our teams have been working in this team since about middle of February. It's been a pretty long time for those of us in this part of the world. To answer your question,
Hi, Anjali, sorry, quality is a bit poor. Could you just try to see if that can be a bit clearer? It's cracking a bit.
We would also request all the participants to kindly keep them on mute while the speakers are speaking. Thank you.
Is this clearer?
Yes, I think it's better.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So as I was saying that for us, how did we communicate with clients earlier? I don't think we are, I would like to say that for BNP Paribas in Asia Pacific, we are largely a corporate and investment bank, which therefore means that we talk to institutions and corporates. So in that sense, how we were communicating with clients prior to the outbreak and how we've been communicating since then has not changed that much in terms of the channels of communication, because for us, the primary channel of communication is still our bankers, still our relationship managers reaching out to our clients. What has changed is, I think, the frequency of the interaction, although that is now remote, virtual or over calls. And it is more the content, I think. It's the frequency and the relevance of the solutions that we are bringing to our clients. The conversations tend to be far more based on what is the client's requirement at this stage and how can we help them get there. Because as you know, even in countries where there are lockdowns, banking is still considered an essential service. And like the comment made earlier about the economy being in bad shape, I think our effort has been to encourage our bankers to have conversations to see how we can help our clients at a time like this.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Actually, I think your sector is one of the most entrenched in this particular crisis. So yes, I do understand that it wouldn't be that easy for the financial sector in any case. How about you, Mary? Would you like to throw some light on what you've done in Lireco? I mean, how you were talking in the past?
Yeah, sure. So maybe a bit of background about Lireco before I start answering the question, so that you can understand who we are. So Lireco is an international leader in B2B distribution. We are selling essentially office product and office solutions. So you can imagine this crisis has been impacting us heavily. It's also from our side, you know, we've been a family-owned business operating 100 years, 20 years in Asia. We are operating in few countries here in Asia, so Hong Kong, Thailand, Korea, and Singapore and Malaysia. If I take the example of Singapore, a bit like Anjali, our main actually mode of communication before the crisis was with our sales rep and sales people going, face to face, doing outdoor activities in a sense that communicating directly with our customers, right? And this has completely stopped at the end of the day with the crisis. So we had to completely change our way of doing and kind of reshape our sales people role. So using, the current tools that we have, enabling them to stay efficient in their way of contacting the customer, that was the most important part from our side, to keep this link, this human link with our customers. I think what is also important, as Anjali was saying a little bit earlier, is that the quality of the contact and the communication and the message was also very important. We had to ensure to our customers that we were there, we were still operating, that essentially, if I take the example of BNP, we are still serving them during that period of time as an essential business. And it was important to tell them that as part of essential business, we were still running, but as part of business, we were having closed down premises. We were also adapting ourselves very quickly. I think Lydia was mentioning that innovation, agility was really key. And in that sense, we had to communicate that also to our customer very, very quickly.
Okay, that's interesting. But while we are on this topic about, talking to our external clients and our external customers, maybe it could be also very interesting to just share with the audience some concrete actions that, your company has done, some concrete communication actions, either internal or external, that your company has undertaken during this crisis, Mary?
Yeah, sure. I can elaborate on that. I will start on the internal side, if you may.
Yes.
So on the internal side, essentially what was important, as I think Yang and Anthony was stressing on that point, was to make sure that our employees were safe, well, and having, the right environment as well to work. So that was the first part. The second part is, I think, also to highlight that our senior management, our leadership, was regularly communicating on what was happening, and that really was a key point to manage, this, as he was saying, I think, Kanchan, resilience, also within the teams. On the other side, for the customer side, I would say what we have taken as an angle is being pragmatic, solution-driven. We had to listen to our customer, put ourselves in their shoes, making sure that essentially we were adapting ourselves to their current situation. So typically, we were very solution-driven, and our communication was really skewed toward that. So typically, the home delivery solution we developed, the credit card payment we developed, and as well the sourcing, because you understand we are sourcing also some vital or some key products, and we were able to do that.
That's interesting. And Florian, how about you? Would you like to throw some light on, from the agency side? I mean, would you like to throw some light on what specific actions you as an agency, a CEO, took in terms of, the internal and the external audiences?
Yes, so thank you, Kanchan. So what I would suggest, rather than talking about our specific organization and what we've been doing at the onset of the crisis, is maybe rather to give you a panorama of what the other brands have done, all the communication and the actions that have been made by many brands across the world. I would basically cluster those more calm initiatives that have emerged since the COVID-19 outbreak in 4 different categories. The first and probably the most obvious thing is the hygiene and the efforts to contain the virus efforts. So you've all heard probably about LVMH, for instance, who has announced very early on that they would shift the production from hand perfumes and cosmetics to hand sanitizer for Parisian hospitals. And they seem somehow to have paved the path for many other firms that have done their own production shifts. So we can quote Ford, for instance, from cars to ventilators, New Balance from shoes to masks. Talking about masks, Kao, which is the most important detergent brand in Japan, over the past weeks have developed a lot of instructions about how to take care of your washable masks. We've also seen all sorts of communication encouraging people to stay home, of course, and even industries that appear to be fully conflicting with the fact to stay home, like the automotive industry and brands like Jeep or Mercedes, or even Valvoline in India, a leading provider of automotive services, have been especially good at sharing the load of the people being locked at home. The second major theme is relative to kids and home activities. So for instance, to support parents stuck inside with their kids, Disney Plus in the US has gifted them with the early release of Frozen 2. And Cookpad, which is a successful recipe sharing platform in Japan, has offered free recipes, easy to cook and not expensive. With millions of kids staying at home, it means that learning takes place mainly at home. And Whirlpool has done something quite interesting. They've created the Chore Club. It's a social series which is built to help the parents make cooking, cleaning, doing laundry a part of their children's new stay-at-home learning curriculum. So that was it's quite funny and very interesting. Entertainment or cheer and positivity spreading is the third cluster. So in February, KFC in China introduced special safety measures for in-store dining, takeout, and delivery services to help keep their customers and staff safe. And to show their appreciation of the staff will remain in their post even in critical heat areas, personal stories were shared on social platforms. And this grew to be a national mission to support society's return to stability. You might have seen also the Oreo campaign in the US, who has created videos posted on social platform where people were doing stuff, fun stuff at home, and showing basically their creativity. It's really hilarious. I encourage you to look at that. And the message is very simple. It's stay home and stay playful. And finally, there is a last cluster that I would call partnership. And this is quite striking, how in this unprecedented period, brands seems to have set aside their differences and stand with other brands, and sometimes even the competitors, to tackle this crisis together. So for instance, Alibaba grocery store, Alibaba has a grocery store network which is called Emma Fresh. And during the crisis, they have hired offline restaurant staff to create a shared employee model. 2,700 employees from 40 companies affected by the crisis obtained a job in Emma Fresh during this period. To assist the frontline health workers returning from overseas, AXA has partnered with Renault in Ireland, and they are providing vehicles as well as insurance coverage to help all the medics that are returning to Ireland to help in the battle against the COVID-19. And finally, with the schools closed and the limits of education system being tested, Verizon has partnered with the New York Times to bring free digital access to Times journalism for every high school in the US. So as you see, there is different kind of initiatives, action around 4 different clusters.
That was really interesting, actually, and I think this was very interesting. The fact that Florian, you gave us information about really what other brands are doing at this time, because we are all trying to think of innovative ways and innovative solutions to be able to come together to address some of the concerns that could be internal or external. I really do think that this brand cohesion or brand partnership, as we may call it, is something that we're going to see more and more of as we even get into the post-crisis era. So I think that was a really interesting point that you brought forward. Coming back to you, Anjali, while we're still at internal communication, there are 3 stages really, that we talk about. So as the crisis begins, the communicators have to provide instructions, information to encourage people to stay calm. Then as people start to follow the safety instructions, our focus shifts to adjusting to the change and the uncertainty. And finally, as we see that the crisis may come to an end, internalizing information to help people make sense of the crisis and its impact becomes equally important. From the perspective of BNP Paribas' internal communication strategy, could you elaborate on these, what you have done internally on these 3 stages of the crisis?
What I would like to begin by saying is you can look at any crisis in these 3 stages when you have a kind of a crisis. The situation we are in currently is...
Sorry, Anjali, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, Anjali, your audio is not so clear, I think. Maybe you need to probably get closer to your laptop.
Is that better?
Very slightly. Okay, you could continue, but it's very slightly better, yes.
Okay. What I was saying is that the 3 stages that you mentioned are really when you're looking at a crisis that is of a regular kind of crisis. The situation that we are in currently is such a fast evolving one, and it is such a continuous kind of crisis situation that it's a little difficult to even establish what are the stages for each of these. Are we at the beginning? Are we in the middle? Because the situation keeps evolving. For example, in Singapore, we thought that the crisis was kind of over until 2 weeks ago when the number of infections escalated again. And we saw even tougher measures than we had at the beginning of the crisis. So I think the way to look at it is really to say what purpose is internal communication serving at the moment, and I look at it in 2 ways. One purpose it serves is really sharing of information and being a trusted source of information for your staff, because there is just everybody is learning together. It's like the economists describe this. It is one big force experiment, and all of us are learning as we go along. And in that sense, for staff, where they're looking at a number of sources of information, it's really what is coming from the company, from us, which is what should become the trusted source, and they know that they can look to us for that. Now, this can take the form of how do the government measures or government restrictions apply to me, or it could take the form of what is the best hygiene practices, what is safe distancing. Like I said, these are all new terms and they're learning them together. So that is one role that internal communication plays. The second part is really what I would call leadership communication. And that is really what is coming from your leadership, because your staff is taking the cue from how your leaders are behaving and reacting. And in that sense, I think keeping up the morale, ensuring staff that their well-being is of paramount importance, and then explaining to them while we work in this split team and fragmented teams as to what is the contribution that they bring, what is the role that they are playing even today as we continue to work in this kind of an environment. So I think those are the roles that communication plays. And in terms of the other part that we've been looking at is really the anxiety that is brought on not just by fears about this crisis because so little is known about the virus, but also the fact that isolation for an extended period of time. For us now, some of our teams have been working from home for, I think, now 2.5 months. And that's a very long time, even if you're communicating with them regularly. The social interaction which used to be there in the offices is kind of missing. So our effort has really been, how do we keep up that connect with our staff? And a number of resources in terms of dealing with anxiety. We've had a number of webinars that have been put together by our HR team, which are specific to dealing with anxiety in times of COVID. We've also stepped up a lot on our learning and development, as people can be at home and pick up a few courses from that are on our online portals. We are encouraging sharing of storytelling by what you'd call everyday heroes. And I think I've heard this from a couple of other companies as well. So we have staff who are going over and beyond in the work that they do for our clients. To kind of testimonials from them, but we also have examples of a colleague in Italy who really in his spare time is driving an ambulance to be able to take staff, to be able to help the community. And I think sharing of this kind of information really motivates people and it keeps them connected to the company. On the other hand, if you look at channels of communication, I was looking at a survey where with a consultancy has done an analysis of what are the channels of communication that you've been using. And with about 50 organizations surveyed, it's the humble email, which has walked away with 96%. 96% of companies said that email is their primary channel, followed by the intranet, which is about 70%. And it's the same for us. At the third position is really video town halls. Again, something that we've been using quite extensively, audio and video town halls. But at the heart of it, really trying to see how you can stay connected. How can you have the virtual huddles, the virtual town halls that people have been used to, so that they continue to feel a part of a larger team.
Great. Anjali, that's really interesting. May I just request we maybe you need to just reconnect because your audio is a little difficult to capture. So probably maybe you just could disconnect and reconnect to the session. In the meanwhile, I'll pose another question to our other panelists. So then we can get you on with the proper audio.
I'll do that.
Okay, thanks, Anjali. Well, just to sum up, what Anjali's been saying, and I think it was very interesting, even though the audio was a little poor. But I think some of the actions that BNP Paribas has done are really. That is the reason why we really wanted to have Anjali's views on this particular topic, because we know that BNP Paribas has taken some strong internal actions. Well, one interesting statistic was that, when public relations firm Edelman was asked workers in 10 countries what they considered the most credible source of information about the coronavirus, 63% of the respondents said that they would believe information about the virus from their employer, versus 58% that trusted government websites, or 51% traditional media. So coming back to the point that Anjali was making, I think as communicators and as responsible employers, it's increasingly important to stay constantly in touch with the internal audience, like Anjali said, probably through emails, which is turning out to be probably the most effective way to communicate with internal audiences. Okay, so thank you so much. And I move on to Florian again, because it could be quite interesting to get the agency perspective on, and especially Publicis being one of the pioneers in creative advertising. In your experience, Florian, when the world turns upside down, should marketing be on during such a time, or should a brand take a pause considering the sensitivity of the crisis? And if yes, how do you make sure the communication has the right tone to resonate with a varied audience of clients?
So So as you can imagine, we had this conversation over and over again with our clients. To begin with, I just would like to restate the fact that there is one universal truth that has proven itself in all previous recessions and that we should learn from. If brands go dark, they will not come out of the crisis stronger. The companies that are cutting investment by 50% for 1 year before returning to a normal weight take up to 2 years to recover lost share. And on the contrary, those that are increasing exposure during the downturn can gain up to 3 times more share in the first 2 years of recovery. So we are actually encouraging our clients to make their brand matter during these times of crisis, because in all likelihood, they will be rewarded with a greater opportunity to grow trial and shares through the downturn, but they will also have more chances to rebound faster when good times return. And the most critical filter to judge the relevancy of brand communication during this crisis, and I'm talking especially about consumer-facing communication, is contribution. The sentence "acts and no ads" has never been as imperative as right now. Action is definitely the name of the game these days. So the question that we encourage our clients to ask themselves is, how can your brand contribute versus how can your brand communicate? In basic terms, do more and say less. So those actions, they must be driven by the brand purpose. They need to be very close to your cultural authority. The objective is to activate the brand purpose and to add brand aligned values to people, to the community, and to the broader nation. I would not advise any brands to disguise themselves. You know, not all the brands, they need to turn into caregivers if it's too far from the brand purpose. If your role is to spread positivity, then just do it and do it well. When it comes to the right tone and messaging, which is also a very sensitive topic, I would say that it's a period where common sense and empathy should prevail. So don't be opportunistic. Don't take advantage of the situation. Don't try to cash in right away. And obviously, Kanchan, we have the same source of information because there is a report from Edelman based on 12,000 interviews in several countries that says that 71% of the respondents said that if during this time they perceive that a brand is putting profit over people, they will lose trust in that brand forever. 71%. And 77% said that if they want brands, that they want brands only to speak about products in a way that shows that they are aware of the crisis and the impact on people's life. The second thing that I would say not to do, don't act on customer exclusive discipline. Embrace all your stakeholders, internal, of course, external, individuals, and institutions. From a brand personality point of view, be extra sensitive on relevancy and topicality. If brands are acting like business as usual and are still running the same advertising, for instance, people immediately feel that the brand is not listened, has not listened, and they don't understand what they are going through. Be generous and tolerant. So still in this Edelman report, the respondents wrongly supported the idea of companies offering free or low price products to healthcare workers or people whose job have been affected, as well as doing whatever they can to protect their own employees and suppliers. So if this is something that you do, make it known. Be authentic, be approachable, admit vulnerability, and even ask for understanding. And especially be accessible. Your website, your lines, your social media, make sure that customers feel that you're ready and available to help them. And finally, a good corporate citizen. Be a good corporate citizen. It's time to contribute to the public good and not to be seen as a super good company. Finally, in terms of brand behavior, what you should be doing is add clarity, create utility, be helpful. If you have products or services that can actually help people, then actually just help people. And I think that one of the good example is the retailers that have dedicated shopping hours for the elderly or those with disability. And finally, cheer up and entertain, if that's what you do.
I think this was really insightful. In fact, even as a brand myself, I think I got advice for free. So I'm happy to be on this panel. Florian, I think it must have been very useful to a lot of our viewers as well. I do agree. I mean, at this point in time, you know, we could even look at it as an opportunity for brands, because this is giving you a good opportunity to build trust, show empathy, and that's going to be sustainable in the future. So thank you very much for that. I think it was really useful. We can take a question now with Mary, because she heads also digital for Lireco Asia. And undoubtedly, I think COVID-19 has taught us all the power of digital transformation. And going forward, I think that's going to really be the new normal. A lot of organizations are already started to think how they're going to digitalize a lot of their processes, and also the work from home, etc. So Mary, from your experience at Lireco Asia, what are the important things to consider while formulating an effective communication strategy to avoid unnecessary panic among the various stakeholders? And what are the key digital tools to support the execution of this strategy? That would be very interesting for some of us to know.
Yes, sure. I hope you hear me, because there is a big storm right now in Singapore. So I don't know if you see the nice background noise, but I try to come close to the mic.
It's quite clear, actually.
Okay, perfect. So that's indeed a very, very good question, Kanchan, and thank you for that. The first thing that we had as a message, you know, to our internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, and I think Florian mentioned that very well, is that first we were acting, meaning our business was going on. Even though, you know, there is a restriction in Singapore or in other countries in Europe, where more and more premises were closing down, the very strong message from our leadership was that we'll continue to operate and we will continue to serve our clients during this unprecedented time. So that was very, very important for us to start, and to also, I think, set the scene in a sense. I would say that when you want to avoid panic, there is two aspects. The first one is methodology. At some point, it's going back to basic, you know, your checklist, what you have to do, but also going back to your leadership and what your leadership also is putting in place as priorities to keep the boat ongoing. I would take that image, but I think our CEO has played that role fantastically to be the captain of the boat during the storm, and to really set the cap for everyone to know what we have to do during that time. Okay, that's the first thing. To go back on the checklist, and I relate also very well with what Florian was just saying, because if you think about it, what we had to do was to consider the whole ecosystem, the whole scope of our audiences, right? So we had to understand who we want to communicate with, right? So our audience. Secondly, what type of message we wanted to do, and thirdly, how we wanted to communicate. So if I split those, you know, this checklist in two parts, internal and external. For internal, as I think all the panelists were saying, the most important part was to communicate on what was happening, the recent updates. Things were changing very fast, meaning information were changing very fast. Government was changing, you know, the rules and etc. So we had to keep everyone informed. So email was one first thing. But thanks to our digital transformation, as you were saying, Kanchan, we are now utilizing fully our digital tools, like our social networking, where we are posting on a daily basis. Sometimes, you know, what are the rules locally, globally. I would say that in France, you know, they were repeating the geste barrière, you know, what you have to do to prevent any infection, any contagion. That's typically how we were using, you know, our tool internally. When I go back to the direction given by our leadership, I think that business-wise, we had, you know, very clear outcomes, right? Or outcomes shared with us, what we had to achieve for our customers. So looking at what our customers needed and really adapting ourselves accordingly. So again, transformation happened within the company, and we are now fully utilizing, again, the suite of tools that we have. So project tool, Microsoft Teams, you know, things like that. So we increased steadily, first, the video conference. Secondly, you know, anything that bring proximity as well with the leadership, webinars, video from our CEO, regular, you know, question and answers in order to make sure that everybody was feeling reassured and safe internally. So that works really well on top of the regular communication that has been happening through emails or through, you know, communicating like a manager to employees and etc. Right? And I really like what Florian was saying, is that we have to bring positivity. We had also to make sure everyone was feeling, you know, well taken care. So cheering up, making sure that actually it's not a social distancing issue, but much more physical distancing issue that is happening right now, right? So a lot of, you know, good tips were posted on our internal network. And also, as we were mentioning, you know, the gesture from the heart, from our own employees to the community, that really brings, you know, the people together, making sure that we are united against, you know, this crisis. And I think that really worked well. On the other side, and I take the customer side because that's also close to my heart, I really enjoyed what Florian was saying, because I think this cluster of communication you were mentioning, where you've got first, you know, safety. That's typically one of the top topic that we were conveying to our customer, because we are selling personal protection equipment items. So typically how to use a mask, how to wash your hands, things like that, that has been, you know, shared as part of our communication plan. Secondly, it's about also how our customers, now being working from home, can deal with the situation. And I really like the kids cluster, because this is something we're developing right now with Lireco in Singapore, that we are coming up with, you know, with something to make kids a bit busy, because we know it's difficult to keep your ongoing meetings on webinar, on conference call, and at the same time have your kids next to you, you know, trying to interrupt you and etc. So we developed, you know, a few things that we are going to release very soon in order to make sure that we are also helping our own customers, you know, in that sense. And literally then afterwards amplifying that in the channels that we own. So our email, of course, marketing, our social media marketing, and really accelerating on that part. I think as you were saying, Konsunta, the situation overall is very is going to change a lot in the future. And for us, the most important part was to explain to the customer that we were by their side during this crisis. I think again, Florian was mentioning that very rightfully. Act more than, you know, communicating, showing that we were there, and that's essentially what we were delivering. So whether it was internally showing that to our employee that we were there, the proximity and the care, and of course to our customer that we are still operating, we're still there, whatever the situation is, and through all the communication links that we have, all communication channels that we have today.
No, that's interesting, and it comes back to that little adage that, you know, we all learned and heard of when we were growing up, actions speak louder than words. So I shouldn't be saying that on the community forum, but in reality today, it's all about your actions and what you're really doing in terms of responsible employers and some tangible actions that people are looking at. So that's really great. I mean, now just to sum up really what we've discussed in terms of, the communication aspects. So basically, if I just got everything right, we need to give people what they need and when they need it, because I think timing in this situation of crisis is absolutely critical. We need to communicate absolutely simply, clearly, and frequently, because people want to hear what's happening. There is this unrest, there is this psychological impact. So the more they hear from the employer and or from their customer, the more comfortable they are. Choose candor over charisma. I mean, we are not talking about any frills here. We need to be straightforward. We need to let people know what they want to hear. We need to revitalize the resilience. I mean, this is something I spoke of earlier as well. And we need to distill some meaning out of this chaos. I mean, I think the situation is absolutely unprecedented, and nobody really, however, was prepared to this scale. So just coming back to now another question that I thought could be very interesting for all of our viewers. So we also understand that now we really need to, as communicators, create a balance between corporate communication and brand communication. Just to sum up, and this could be a very interesting topic that maybe would take some more time, is that like all of us, I mean, I'm sure your organizations as well are preparing for return to work, post the crisis communication, so post crisis. And I think now as communicators, a lot of us, that's the first question on our minds, that we've done our bit during the crisis, at the onset of the crisis, and now we really, because a lot of people say that the return to work is going to be even more difficult than the work from home, So I think this is something that a lot of our viewers also would be interested to know. How, as organizations, are we getting ready, and what are some of the key messages that we need to elaborate on when we start engaging with either our employees or our customers on the return to work. So I don't know, Anjali, have you been able to fix your audio? Hi, Anjali. You need to unmute yourself. Okay, well,
is this any better? Can you hear me now?
Yes, this is better. So can we have the BNP Paribas on this message that, post crisis, what are the key messages that you think would be critical to your audiences?
Yeah, so Kanchan, the point that I would like to make, 2 points before I get into what we think we could do going forward, is when we define post-crisis, what really do we mean? Because if you hear all the healthcare experts or the CDCs in the different countries, what they're telling us is this is going to come at us in waves. And we may see future lockdowns again to deal with waves. So I don't think, even when we go back to work, if we can call it that, and I heard somebody say we won't really be going back to work, you have to reimagine the workplace and consider it as more going forward. But I think we have to first ask ourselves that we have to prepare, I think, that it's not going to be a post-COVID world at the end of this lockdown. And perhaps as communicators, whether externally or internally, have to be in that state of preparedness, because I think the experts are telling us that even going back to what we knew as normal is not going to be possible until you have a vaccine or a cure, right? So that's the first point that I'd like to make, because I think we have to be in a state of preparedness for much longer than you would in a normal crisis, where it's over and then you go back to what was. That's not going to be how this is going to play out. The second thing that I want to, it's an observation that over the past 2 months, in terms of having people stay back at home or explaining to them why they need to do social distancing or maintain hygiene, there has been a lot of communication from governments, through media, through corporates, saying how long, for example, how long does the virus survive and on what surfaces, for example? How long can it stay in the air? Where can you get it from? And what I call, it's fear based in the facts that have been shared with us. And these facts were shared and repeated again and again to help us stay indoors and accept that staying indoors was the best way to deal with this crisis. But with all this knowledge, what happens when you're going to now suddenly say you have to go back to work and you have to use, say, public transport? So I think we have to keep both of these points in mind when we think about what happens next. And the third element that I want to say is the workplace is going to be a very different workplace that we go to. I was looking at a McKinsey report which imagines a future workplace. And apart from actually segregating the workstations, they're also talking of, for example, wearables that may alert you if you're too close to a colleague. We may see, the government say that you still cannot have meetings of more than, say, 10 people. And so everything that we have worked to build towards, which is in terms of building teams and bonding, is all going to be very different. So the way I look at this communication is really, it's going to be change communications, because we have been through an intense period of change, really in a period of just 2 to 3 months. But that's only going to continue for a much longer, or a very longer period of time. So the way in which we are preparing, and I think it's early to say, because at least in Singapore, we have another almost 4 weeks to go, but different countries are at different stages and some of them are beginning to come back. We haven't really yet given it a thought because the situation is too fluid to plan today. I think in about another 10 days time or so, we should start looking at it. But it is going to be focused on behavior of staff. They've got a bit used to it over a period of time. But for example, we talk about how do you feel? But if wearing of masks is going to be mandatory inside the offices, which it is today, then that's going to make things even more difficult in terms of getting teams together. So what we're thinking today is, I don't have concrete steps to share, but we are taking into account what's going on around us in the world and then trying to figure out how is this going to impact communications and what is it that we can come back with. But it is, I think I see a role as people start going back to the workplace or to the premises, office premises to work. I think it's going to be even more heightened communication than we have seen so far. And the fear factor, the anxiety is still going to be high.
I agree with you. And as communicators, we'd have to probably be one of the change agents, for our organization. Because I think at this point in time, with uncertainty, clear communication is so critical. Never before, I guess, but today, I think it's really critical. Mary, maybe you would like to add something on this one in terms of Lireco and some of the actions.
Yeah, sure. And I agree with what me and you were saying, that this will bring a new normal. This situation will bring a new normal, and we will have to get used to it and to get ready. So, as you can imagine, for us as office product, distributor, it means a lot of anticipation right now. So anticipation on our employee side, how we are going to get organized tomorrow. So communicating frequently, even reshaping again, more and more our way of engaging with our customer, but still bringing, as we have been doing so far, a very down-to-earth approach, pragmatic, what we can do for our customers through our employees and through our salespeople. So we are getting ready. This is something that has been happening for the past few weeks now globally. As Anjali was saying, the lockdown situation is very different from one country to another. So also adapting ourselves internally to get ready to be back to this new normal. As you were saying, on the customer side, we know that our clients will have most probably more and more work from home. It will prevail more and more, or tougher rules at office that will have to be applied, and we will have to really comply by that. So what we live, our customer will experience exactly the same. So I would say that in our approach, again, the way we see it is that we have to be very pragmatic, very empathic, and making sure that first our customers understand that we can help them in that situation to go back to work. Simply because they might have to focus even more on their side to make their business running. And, you know, all those particularities, specificity, like rules, how to set up now a new offices, how to protect their employee, that's something that we can take care of. And that's essentially what we would like to say right now to the customer, and that the position of the company is that you take care of your priorities and we take care of the rest, in a sense, especially of your workplace, right? I think that's very important also for companies and for brands. And we have been really experiencing that in our company, is to show that the management and the company itself cares about the employees. It has been a tough time. It has been a very complicated situation, very unstable emotionally, business-wise. So we went through a lot. And when you go back to work, you have, to my mind, to show to your employees that you are happy to welcome them back, you know, to their premises, even though there are some restrictions, but you are happy, right? And something that has been really, really a success stories on our side is one of our subsidiary in Hong Kong has really shown that to our customers. We are supporting our current customers to deliver some what we call care pack to their employee. And when they arrive at the office, they can find in a small pack hand sanitizer, a mask, you know, some wipes and etc. in order to start, I would say, on the right foot, but start with also first, we take care of your safety, we take care of your wellness, and we realize that you've been there the whole time and with you. So that's really important. So on top of that, I think that on the post-crisis, that I would say that we have been always there by our customer side. So we will continue, you know, to be very solution-driven in the future. And we have to become a much more like a workplace consultant. So really listening to our customer, assessing, suggesting, and providing the right product according to the needs. And that's where again we want to go in terms of approach for Lyreco, and we will continue in that direction with passion and agility.
Just to conclude on this one, maybe we could just have a quick summary of, you know, all our discussions. And I don't know if Florian, you want to just quickly within a minute want to add something here, but we need to conclude the session so we can have the question and answers.
No, look, I'm going to let you conclude, because I would rather take the part of your question that has to do with the post-crisis communication, but it's a bit long, so I'd rather let you conclude, Kanchan.
Okay, great.
This is a whole chapter in itself, actually.
Yeah, actually, and as communicators, we all know that we have a lot of work to do. So we are all getting bruised up for that. So just to conclude, I think it's been extremely interesting. There's been a diverse panel, and really, Florian, I think getting the agency view is something very interesting for all of us, because you've given us an idea of brands across industries. So that was really good. Just to conclude in very, very simple terms is that, so for the future, I mean, it's very clear that the brands must focus on communicating responsibly. I mean, that's undoubtable. Adding value will become a pillar of communication, because everybody is going to see the value add that a brand is going to bring. Customers will turn to brands, only the brands that they've come to trust, because this was a kind of a test for many, many brands these couple of months, and maybe months to go forward as well. So as I think Florian mentioned, I mean, here is where, you know, the brands who built that trust would be sustainable in the future. And lastly, good news for you, Mary, but honestly, digital will indisputably lead the way forward for communication. Yeah. We will see more and more of the data analytics and artificial intelligence that will guide us in terms of, how to serve our customers and how to take our business forward. So with that, thank you very much for these very interesting insights. It was an absolute pleasure moderating the session with the three of you. And of course, as communicators, we're going to stay in touch even after the session through our very own IFCCI. I hand over now to Ishita probably to take the questions from the audience.
Thank you, Kanchan. Thank you, everyone, for an excellent panel discussion. So we have the first question from Mr. Christopher Demetrakos, and his question is how to explain Coca-Cola going dark globally. So I request one of the panelists to please feel free to answer this question.
Maybe Florian could take this one since she'd be better clued on.
Well, yes. So basically, we wondered the same question. It was quite a bold move from Coca-Cola to decide to stop communicating. Now, you can also argue that when you have the awareness of Coca-Cola, when you're such a powerful brand where you are the leader of the soft drink company, you can probably afford to go dark for during this period. I think if you remember, they had also started by with few communication about social distancing, and that was they unfortunately they faced a little backlash because playing with the logo was not perceived as serious enough during this very critical time that people were going through. So that could have also explained the reason why they decided to finally stop any kind of communication. I would say, I would tend to say that when you're such a powerful brand and well-known brand than Coca-Cola, you can probably afford it a bit more than brands that are belonging to the second tier.
Okay, thank you, Florian. So our next question is, what would be a suggestion for companies in manufacturing industry, such as manufacturing of machine parts? So somebody would like to answer this question? Mary, Anjali, Florian, anyone?
Is the question, is it specifically about internal communications or is it about external communications? I just heard, I managed to hear only manufacturing industry. Is that correct?
So, yes, so it's actually about crisis communication, both internal and external, and they're asking for suggestions for companies who are within the manufacturing industry. How would they manage their crisis communication?
I think if I can take it on both parts, I'm going to attempt, because it's been a while since I've worked in a manufacturing industry. But again, and it also depends on which country this question is coming from. But is it under lockdown? Is staff still going into work? So it's a little difficult to give a generic comment without knowing at least some of the specifics, because the situation would be very different if your staff was still, if you were considered an essential service, or as Florian said, where some of the manufacturers have turned from manufacturing their regular goods to something that really helps the economy or is a requirement for the healthcare crisis right now. So I think in terms of internal communications, everything that we talked about still remains, which is, I think it's, your employees need to know that they come before everything else at this stage, that their well-being is paramount. If they're coming into work, then there would be anxiety levels. So some of the steps that we talked about earlier to manage that anxiety. If they're in a lockdown and at home, I think there's a lot of concern around isolation and how do you still feel connected to your colleagues, to your company. And I think just we have, some of our businesses have
daily team meetings. At 9 in the morning, they will just connect. So even if the issues are not very big to discuss, it's more about staying together and having that sense of a team. So that is one way to do it. I think what we've also done is run surveys called mood surveys to test. It's just a very short one with five questions maybe, just to get a sense of what staff is feeling, looking at what is it that they would like us to do more, and then acting on it and communicating that back, because that way there's a sense that they are heard, that we are taking some actions basis the feedback that we are getting, and then going back. And in terms of communicating with customers, I think there's a lot that Florian covered in her initial comments, which is really about staying close to the customers, telling them, I mean, if you're in business as usual, then it's business as usual, but if you're not, keeping them informed at all steps about really where you are, when you expect to resume, what is it that you're doing. A lot of time, I think people just want to have some information and some guidance, even if you don't have a definitive one. And lastly, I think it's the community. So in terms of this, the COVID crisis, it's really the three areas that we look at are employees, communities, and customers. And in terms of communities, anything that you can do to help the communities around you, I think that's building a lot of goodwill, not just with various stakeholders, but also with staff. So I don't know if this is helpful, but I think it's generic given that we don't have any more details about where the question was coming from.
Thank you, Anjali. I think that was definitely interesting. I think there's an add-on to this question basis the answer that you provided. So this is from Mr. Richard Borjaneve. So his question is how to manage the communication to employees, not creating unfair situations depending on anxiety. Those who want to keep working from home versus those who want to come to office.
I might take this one.
Please go ahead.
So it's the communication between who is working from home, right? And the one that are working at the office.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. So first of all, I think that we mentioned that a few times, but the most important part is to be reassuring, whatever the choice of the employee, to make sure that also there is a support, in the decision, of course, on what has been chosen. However, I believe that more and more, some of the premises wanted to, or the companies wanted to have all the employees, at the same time at the office. So what I wanted to say is that with facts, with explanation, with showing, simply showing to the employee that you have made everything right to welcome them at the office. You rearrange, the setup at some point. That might be also a way to reassure them and to make them feel at ease to come back to the office and not being afraid of going back. Then I think the other side of the question might be how we make sure that those ones who stay home and the ones who work from the office are still, communicating with each other. And that's, I think, where we will have much more actually there was a webinar from the French Chamber of Commerce in Singapore about that, the distributed team, meaning you still have people working from home, people working, at the office. And actually the best way to do it right now is to use, the tools that we have, video conferencing and etc., regular catch up, not changing anything to what have been put in place so far. In terms of either innovation or collaborative approach to make sure that the people are working together. What is important, and one of the key takeaway we had from this webinar, and I'm quoting that, is really to bring clarity, and this is what normally you should have done along, the crisis, clarity, trust among everyone. When we at some point work, in a different location, how we make sure that we can count on each other to make sure that things are going on. And then make sure that it's outcome driven. So it's a bit like what we just discussed. The really, the the pragmatic approach, making sure people are still communicating, physical distancing, but at some point still communicating with each other, and continuing those regular points, those regular activities, while yeah, it's still a bit complicating, and internally making sure that we communicate with facts, with clarity on what is happening and how we can at some point go back together with the restriction that we might have.
Great. Thank you, Marie. I think that was a very clear-cut answer. Thank you very much. So I request the audience now, if they have any questions, they can unmute themselves and directly ask our panelist. We have scope for 2 more questions. Do we have any questions? Okay.
Maybe we can wait for a minute, and if we have more questions, participants can put them in the chat box. Thank you.
Okay, I think the panel discussion was quite clear and we don't have any more questions. So thank you very much, Anjali, Florian, and Mary, and Kanchan. I hand over. Oh, sorry. We do have one last question. I'm sorry. I'll quickly read this out to you. What is the panel's expectations from employees post the crisis is over? For example, digitizing of manual processes.
I didn't catch that. Digitizing of?
So I'll repeat the question. It comes from Mr. Abhijit Bose. What is the panel's expectation from employees post the crisis is over? For example, digitizing of manual processes.
If I can take that, it's not specifically in the context of BNP Paribas, but just from everything that you read and that you hear from colleagues in other industries or other sectors. I think you can, if it's a way of putting it, it's change on steroids, and that's really what we've seen over the last 2 or 3 months. A lot of times, processes that you thought for a variety of reasons, for example, in banking because of legal reasons or compliance reasons, or simply making tech changes to technology infrastructure that you thought would not be immediately possible or that were long-term projects. It's surprising how quickly they've been compacted and how quickly we have come around to finding a way of working and finding a way of working that is effective and still respects all the requirements from your regulators. So I think in terms of digitizing, whether it's manuals or processes or just the way we work, I think the hope is that everything that we've learned in the last 2 or 3 months that is possible will continue. And I think that's what most organizations and most employees would expect. They have seen a different reality. They've seen an alternate version of what work can be like, and it's going to be really difficult to go back to what it was. And so really, like I said, I'm sorry about that. There's, like Mary said, there's a really bad storm here. But it's really, I heard this on another webinar where this lady actually said that we are not going back to work. We have to think of it as going forward to work and really reimagine what the workplace, what our work is going to be like. It is going to be quite different. And I think for good reasons.
That's a definitely point taker. Looking forward to work as well. So we have a last question of the day. This is from Dhruv, and the question is, how will demand disruption impact you and how will you recover from the aftermath? Anybody would like to take this?
Sorry, it doesn't impact us in the sense of demand destruction, so it's not a direct impact.
Okay. Maybe Florian, you can put some light to it in terms of, since you work with so many brands.
Yes, I'm thinking about it. It's not, the problem is that it's not a short answer to that, because for sure there will be an impact on revenue for most of the brands. I was, you know, if I think about my own portfolio of clients, it's between 20% or 30% down on revenue, and what we keep on telling our clients is you have to manage both the short term, so how do you really optimize everything that has to do with your purchase funnel, but you also need to invest for the future, because if you don't keep your brand silent and different, then people will forget it after the crisis. So I would say that the most important thing is very much to balance this short term, to balance the investment, the spending that you will continue injecting behind the short-term sales, while still investing behind your brand, to make sure that the purpose that you have for this brand will be fit for the new era, because we will be entering a new era for sure. The needs, the consumer expectation will look different. So how do you make sure that you really get the pulse on what people want, and how do you adapt your positioning as a brand to those new aspirations? This is as critical as fueling the short-term sales. So in a short answer, that's the way I would respond.
Thank you very much. I think that was a great response. So I think now we'll just close the session, and I pass on the mic to Rishika, who will take this further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishita. We are very pleased to conclude the vote of thanks, and I would like to read out few names and the organization team who has really worked hard in putting this together. This was the first APAC webinar we did, and that too during the lockdown. So thank you, everyone. I would like to start by Ms. Pailas Kanwar from CCI Inde, Ms. Mary Ozaki from CCI Japan, and Ms. Lydia Fulton from CCI Singapore. And of course, our great panel, Ms. Anjali Patil from BNP Paribas, Singapore, Ms. Florian Tripolino from Publicis Japon, Ms. Mary Konsunta from Lireco Asia, Singapore, and of course, our fabulous moderator, Ms. Kanchan Daya, Vice President, Public Affairs, Total, India. I would also like to thank Ishita Jain for all her coordination, and her entire team for putting this together, and of course our participants. We are very delighted to conclude the session.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.